This week, we begin the second half of Sefer Shemot, which includes the detailed instructions for the construction of the Mishkan, followed by the actual construction of the Mishkan, and interrupted by Chet HaEgel, ultimately the reception of the second set of Luchot. And the question that everyone asks while they're reading these Parshiot is pertaining to the detail orientation of the Parshiot. So many psukim, so many words, so many prakim dealing with the construction of the Mishkan and the physical construction and its kalim, every tiny thing that must be included and exactly how big it needs to be and exactly how many there need to be. And it would be one thing to have this description once, right? But essentially we have this description twice. First in Terumah and Tetzaveh, and ultimately secondly in Vayakel and Pekudei, with the instructions followed by the actual construction. And it would be one thing to have it once. It would be one thing to have it twice if we were dealing with a mitzvah that we ever needed to know again. But to have this degree of detail orientation invested in the Mishkan, which we would never actually really need for the future, right? Once we start building the Beit HaMikdash, we're not building the Mishkan anymore. This isn't even an instruction that we're supposed to be passing down for generations. So it's a one-time instruction, and it takes 4 parshiot, and they're not small parshiot. And the question that everyone asks is, what is the necessity for this detail orientation around the Mishkan? What is the necessity for so much content in Sefer Shemot being occupied by the construction of the Mishkan? So I think it's interesting if you take a couple steps back and just look at how things have gone for us as a nation so far. We're in Mitzrayim. Things, of course, are not going all of that well. And Moshe is sent to us. We're crying out, right? And Moshe is sent to us, saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu has recalled the Brit he established with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he is going to rescue. And the Klal Yisrael were really reluctant to even believe that that was the case. Ultimately, things got worse before they got better, and they left frustrated, and Moshe Rabbeinu left frustrated. But as God said he would, he stepped in and really took care of everything. Right? From Dam, Tzvardei, Kinim, throughout the Makot, Klal Yisrael had to do almost nothing. Kadosh Baruch Hu divinely differentiated between them and the Egyptians, and Klal Yisrael were spectators with God's annihilation of the Egyptians and their army and their animals and their firstborns, etc., etc. Up until Makat Bechoro, this was the first time that Klal Yisrael was asked to do anything. And it wasn't major, it wasn't tremendous. They weren't going to war against the Egyptians. They weren't asked to attack the Egyptians. They were asked for some sort of symbol of faith or investment, some sort of indication that they are part of this process, right? So you take a lamb into your home, you put the blood on the doorposts, God knows that you're a part of it, and don't worry, he'll take care of the rest. Again, very little to no expectation on Klal Yisrael's end. Then we go into the Midbar. And again, we're protected miraculously by the Ananei HaKavod, by the Amud HaEsh, right? The Yam Suf splits miraculously. Everything is taken care of for us. The Egyptians are wiped out in one fell swoop. We don't need to pick up a sword. We don't really need to do anything. Everything done for us. The man comes and feeds us. The well comes and gives us water. Everything taken care of for us. Now, if you're Klal Yisrael, you start to think, hey, I guess this is what it means to be the chosen nation. We're special and God does everything for us, right? But when you look in the Torah, that's not the sense that you get. The sense that you get is not that what it means to be Klal Yisrael is, here are a bunch of things that God is going to do for us, because I guess, we're special and God has a plan. And so he's going to take care of everything and we just sit back. Right? The Torah consists of endless responsibilities that we have, and that gives us a much clearer picture of what we're doing here. And in short, I think that you can say what it means to be Klal Yisrael has a lot less to do with what God is doing for you and has a lot more to do with what you are doing for God. Right? But at the very outset of our history, we got a very backwards message. That's certainly not how things were looking, and understandably so. We were really in no place to stand up and do things. Right? Our religious background, our spirituality, our faith, everything was at an all-time low. We weren't in much of a place to take care of ourselves. And so God needed to take care of us, so to speak. And everything was done by God. But at the second half of Sefer Shemot, things start shifting. And they start to shift now, but things only continue that way. It only becomes more so once we get into Eretz Yisrael, and even more so in Bayit Sheni, and even more so after Bayit Sheni, which is that the focus of Torah is not about what God does for us. The focus of Torah becomes what we do for God. Ultimately, that's the goal, right? But there's this training process, like a young child whose parent takes care of them, knowing that that's not the goal, that's not the objective for their entire lives, right? The objective of the parent is to raise children who are able to raise their own children, who are able to be self-sufficient. And we as a nation are supposed to be spiritually self-sufficient. And like children, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is holding our hand, but slowly, surely, we are getting closer and closer to the point where we're supposed to be religiously self-sufficient. I think that that's the message, and that's the main focus of the Mishkan, is up until now, God has done everything for you, right? But that's not how it's always going to be. In fact, your main focus here is not what God does for you. Your main focus in this world is what you do for God. And that's the message and the emphasis placed on the Mishkan, right? Is that you're taking the reins. It's your job to build for God. I think that this also explains the interruption of Chet HaEgel, perhaps. See, Klal Yisrael lost Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were very distraught, or they assumed to have lost Moshe Rabbeinu. They jumped to that conclusion. They were almost eager to assume that they lost Moshe Rabbeinu, and eager to replace him. But it's interesting that you would assume the natural assumption would be, let's replace him with another leader, but they don't. They try to replace him with a god, with an idol. And perhaps the reason is because they don't want this human-led religion. They don't want this human-led nation. They want God to keep leading them. So we had the instruction for the Mishkan, and maybe that scared Klal Yisrael, depending, of course, on how you understand the order of the Parshiot. But maybe that scares Klal Yisrael to think that we have to take over, that not everything is going to be God doing for us. What we have to do now, we have to do for God, we have to serve God. It's not what I signed up for. I signed up for the God serves me religion. And so they're eager to replace Moshe, a human being, with a God, with another God, to say that we don't want the human-led religion, we want the God-led religion. And I think that maybe this is the message as well as of the second set of Luchot. See, even though we were forgiven for Chet HaEgel, something changed. Originally, we got the first set of Luchot, written by God, and then we get the second set of Luchot, written by Moshe Rabbeinu. And you have to ask, it's like, well, are we forgiven or not? Because it seems like God is holding on to this grudge and saying, you know what, I forgive you, but I'm not really going to give you the same Luchot back. But I think that it's probably a lesson to us, is that this is exactly what the issue was with Chet HaEgel, is that we don't want Moshe, we don't want the human, we want God to lead us. We want God to do everything. That's how we want things to run. And maybe the lesson of the second set of Luchot is that's not how things work from now on, right? Is that your Torah is your responsibility to bring God into the world through the mitzvot and through the Mishkan. And maybe that's the lesson of the second set of Luchot. Say that it's not God doing everything. It's we do everything. And then the emphasis, the repeated emphasis of Vayakel Pekude is to say just that. While we construct the Mishkan detail for detail as God instructed us to do, we kind of internalize this message that we are committed to building for God in the world. We get that this is our job. We have to take things on ourselves and not let God do everything for us.